Good afternoon, everyone. It is Sunday, November the 22nd, 2020. It is currently 4:16 p.m. Central Time, coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church, located here in Ovalo, Texas. And I'm still suffering from being humiliated. All right, let me ask you a question. Have you ever been live on the air and you make an absolute fool of yourself? Right? You make a fool of yourself so bad that you're so humiliated that you never want to be heard from again. Yet, as soon as you're done with that live broadcast, you have to turn around and go live again right after being completely humiliated. Well, if you've never experienced that, let me tell you, it's not pleasant because now I don't even want to talk. I am so embarrassed. In our last live broadcast, we were working on chapter 13 of the book, The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. And he uses the word inconstancy. And for some reason, inconstancy, I read the word correctly, inconstancy. I looked it up to ensure I knew what it meant. Then when I looked at the meaning, I'm like, wait a minute. That's basically the definition for inconsistency. So the word isn't inconstancy. It has to be inconsistency. Right? So I'm saying the word incorrect. So I tell everyone, I said the word wrong. The word is inconsistency. The word is not inconstancy, right? Then I go back and look live on the air and go, wait a minute. The word is inconstancy. It's not inconsistency. What am I doing? So I make a complete fool of myself. At the very end of the broadcast, I go back and look at the definition of inconsistency just to make sure, like, okay, no, it's basically the same meaning, but inconstancy, inconsistency. They're not spelled the same way. So they're different words with similar meanings. Okay. Inconstancy, inconsistency. They're okay. So I completely mess it up. And then there was another word in the translation I was using, physic. I think the word was physic. And I completely messed that one up. I looked up the definition and finally figured that out. So there were basically inconstancy. I read it correctly. I looked it up, then I convinced myself, wait a minute, I apologize, everyone. The word is inconsistency. Then I go back and look, and I'm like, no, actually, it is inconstancy. And then I got completely confused live on the air. Yeah, that's what I did. That's what I did. It was embarrassing. And what do you do? What do you do? You know what you do? The smart thing to do, the right thing to do from a human perspective would be delete it, right? That's the thing I should do. I should delete it and just re-record it. But I'm not going to do that for a spiritual reason, right? I've talked about this so much. What has to be most important in your life and my life is our spiritual advancement. Right? That has to be the most important thing in our life. If anything else is more important, then you're already in trouble spiritually. So in other words, am I more worried about the way people perceive me? Am I more worried about how, like, my own ego, my own pride? I'm embarrassed by it. I'm humiliated by it. It was foolish. I messed up. And really it distracted from the overall teaching. So I could make an argument that I distracted from the overall teaching, so I should delete it and redo it again so it would be done professional and benefit people. But I could use that argument that I'm trying to benefit people, but would I really be trying to benefit people, or would I be trying to benefit myself? And the reality is I'd be trying to benefit myself. So I'm going to leave it there to humiliate myself, and hopefully something spiritually will derive from it. So that happened. So now here I am, and I'm supposed to teach now on the book of James. So that's what we're going to try to do. This one is going to be interesting here. All right, we're gonna this one. I think what we're gonna do in this episode. I don't know if we're really going to get to an answer, but I think we're going to challenge a lot of common interpretations, and you'll see what we're going to do here. If you have a Bible, open to James chapter 4. And let me remind you that in James chapter 4, do I have them listed here in this notebook? I think I may have grabbed the wrong notebook. James chapter 4. Yeah, I'm going to make a fool out of myself again. Right? James chapter 4, whether I have them listed here in this notebook or not, it won't ultimately matter because we can look them up in the text. James chapter 4. Nope, I have them right here. All right. James chapter 4. We are looking at 10 imperatives in James chapter 4, or what I'm referring to as the 10 commandments of James chapter 4. And starting in verse 7, from 7 to verse 11, we have 10 commandments or 10 imperatives. The first one was submit yourselves therefore to God. So we're to submit ourselves to God. Next was resist the devil and he will flee from you. Next, draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. The next was cleanse your hands, ye sinners. Now, I've been going back playing the key Greek word in each one, like the Greek word for submit, the Greek word for resist, the Greek word for draw nigh, and the Greek word for cleanse your hands. I've been doing that, but I'm not going to do that in this episode because I want us to really try to figure out this next commandment, all right? Now, we're told to cleanse our hands. In the previous commandment that we looked at, we are told to cleanse our hands, which would be, I think, commandment number 4 in our list of 10. All right, cleanse our hands. Now, I think we can conclude that the emphasis there is to cleanse my hands, is to cleanse my actions, to purify my actions. And we talked about some different ways in which we can do that, all right? We talked about some ways in which we are to understand that, how we are to cleanse our actions. And I'm not going to go back and review all of that. But we definitely focused a little bit on the external because we believe that the next commandment works on the internal. We are to cleanse our hands, but we are to purify our hearts because simply cleaning my hands alone is not sufficient because that only makes me look externally righteous, but internally I'm like the Pharisees. On the outside of the cup, I look good, but inside I'm full of corruption. And we can't do that. We've got to purify our hearts. And I believe there's some truth there, but I'm not sure that's exactly... I don't know if that's exactly what James is going for here, especially in light and the way this is constructed, all right? So, cleanse your hands, but purify your hearts. What exactly is James talking about here? Well, we're going to work through this, and we're going to see what we can discover, all right? So, let me read it to you again. James chapter 4, verse 8. Purify your hearts. Now, I'm not going to read the next part. Just purify your hearts. Let's first work on this, all right? Let's work on the word purify. Let's work on the word purify. So I'm going to open the Blue Letter Bible app. The Blue Letter Bible app. We're going to go to James chapter 4. James chapter 4. We're going to go down to verse 8. We're going to open up the interlinear. There's the interlinear. All right. Purify. Purify your hearts. All right. It means this. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Strong's G48. Hagnizo. Hagnizo.
Hagnizo means to make pure, purify, cleanse, ceremonially or morally. All right. Not a lot of help there. It's used 7 times. And so there's not a lot of help there, but you get the idea that we got to do something in our hearts to purify it, to cleanse it morally. So this kind of carries the idea, hey, cleanse your hands, but you also got to work on your heart. You got to purify your heart. All right. That sounds good, right? That the two are connected, but there's something that happens in this verse that gives me pause in that way of interpreting it. That yes, we're to cleanse our hands, but we're also to purify our hearts. But look at what he does here. It's very interesting. He says to purify your hearts, ye double-minded. The people that need to purify their hearts are the ones who are double-minded. Now, we've got to really work on this idea. What does it mean to be double-minded? So let's go back to the interlinear, because I think this is where the key is in understanding this commandment here, right? So let's open up the interlinear. double-minded. All right. The Greek word is
Strong's G 1374. Dipsuchas. Dipsuchas.
all right. Now it means double-minded. Okay, that doesn't help us. Wavering, uncertain, doubting. Now here's the key. Divided interest. Divided in interest. Divided in interest. It's used 2 times. James 1:8, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And then James 4:8, purify your hearts, ye double-minded. So the one who needs to purify their heart is the one who is divided in interest. Their heart, their mind is divided. They're double-minded. One article states it this way about this phrase. Let me open it up. They state it this way. The term double-minded comes from a Greek word meaning a person with 2 minds or souls. All right, now, I didn't, let me see. Let me go back here to the interlinear. Let me see here. I'm going to tap to view the, let's see here. I'm looking at the Thayer's Greek lexicon. Double-minded, a wavering, uncertain, doubting. Divided in interest, namely between God and the world. This phrase is not found in secular writings. So I don't know exactly where they get that it means the way that they describe it. I think the idea is there. So to be double-minded is a person that has 2 minds. They're divided in their interest and their loyalty. They're divided between the world and God. They're divided between the world and God. And the idea is you need to purify your heart. Now, typically, what we had done is we had drawn the contrast between clean your hands, right? You got to clean your hands, but you also got to clean your heart because God doesn't want just an external purity. He wants an internal purity. And I understand that there is absolute truth to that. But in this commandment here in James 4, the purifying of your heart seems to be in contrast to the double-minded. If you're double-minded, you need a purified heart because a purified heart is the cure to being double-minded. Now, what would that mean? Well, it seems that this would be the way to understand it. Purify your heart, meaning a singleness of heart, a single devoted heart is the cure to a double mind. If in the mind you have a divided interest, if in the mind you're torn between God and the world, then if your heart is purified and a singleness of heart is generated, where your heart is given fully to one thing, then it cures the double mind. Singleness of heart cures double-mindedness because double-mindedness, I'm torn between this or this. But if my heart is given over to a love for one thing, then my interest is not divided. There becomes a calmness to the double-minded because the singleness of heart takes over. The internal desire overrides the divided mind. So I read a lot of articles, how to purify your heart, how to purify your heart, how to purify your heart. And a lot of them made reference to this passage. And I think, though, the idea here, the purifying of the heart here is meaning you purify your heart so that it's devoted to one thing. It's devoted to God above all else. If your heart is devoted to God, then the double-mindedness goes away. So you have to try to purify everything in your heart that causes a conflict. That, in other words, a divided heart leads to a double mind. A divided heart leads to a double mind. A singleness of heart cures a double mind. So what is your heart? What is in your heart that needs to be purified or out so that your heart can have a single devotion, can be a single-hearted person? We are conflicted with so many things. We love God. We understand that we are to set our affections on things above, but there's so much in this world pulling at us, drawing us away, trying to get us to be divided, and it leads to a double mind. And a double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. We're going to be unstable spiritually. We have to purify the heart in that way. So let's go back to James chapter 4. James chapter 4. Let's go through these again. Submit yourself therefore to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Draw nigh to God and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, ye double-minded. And that's we're not going to go to the next one. I know this one may be ultimately short, but I think this one is ultimately, I think what we have to do with this is try to correct the way that this is often dealt with. I think this is often dealt with, purifying your heart as the idea that all the impurities and all the sinfulness in my heart. I think the focus here is purifying the heart by getting rid of that which competes for our love, devotion, and attention. Because a divided heart leads to a double mind. A double mind makes us unstable in all of our ways. Then we're tossed to and fro, and our Christian life is a mess. We got to get the heart right. We got to get the heart right. And you've seen it in your life and other people's lives. Sometimes it shows up a lot of times in young people, all right? They have a heart for God. They love God. They seem to be really moving, growing spiritually. Everything seems to be going great. And then all of a sudden, they end up in a relationship. There's this guy that they fall in love with, or this guy falls in love with some girl. And all of a sudden, their heart becomes divided. Their heart becomes divided, right? They've got this loyalty to God. But, oh, man, they are so infatuated with this person. They love this person. They're preoccupied with this person. They can't eat. They can't sleep. That's all they think of. They want to spend every waking moment with them. And when they're not with them, they're talking to them, texting them. That's their life. And their heart gets divided. And guess what happens? That divided heart leads to being double-minded, and they become unstable in their spiritual life. And you start seeing them being tossed to and fro spiritually all over the place. Now, that happens, we see it vividly in that way, but we can see it in countless other ways. The purifying of the heart is working to a single devoted heart. That to me is, I think, what's being stated here. I think it does deal with, look, the clean hands alone is not enough. We got to have a purified heart, but the purified heart here deals with the double-mindedness. That is what I'm really going to go with in my interpretation. So this imperative challenges you to look at your heart, purify anything out of it that's leading to a double. So you've got to be able to acknowledge your double-mindedness. Right? This conflicted mind between God and the world. But it originates from the heart. And so you have to purify the heart by purifying anything out of that heart that you're giving yourself to, your love, your devotion, and your time. So that singleness of heart leads to the singleness of mind. A double heart leads to double mind, which leads to instability. All right? I think that's as simple as I can make it. I think I know I could just move on to another one, but I really want you to think about this one. I really want you to meditate on this. I really want you to struggle with this one, because this one is very important, because we've all been there. We've all found ourselves double-minded, but it comes from the heart. The double-mindedness comes from the heart. And that's why he says purify the heart. I think that's a very important concept. All right? Give me your thoughts. You can email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. I know there's more that could be said, but I just kind of want to go quick, fast, put it before you, and then see if we spark some interesting conversations in regards to it. All right, I'll stop right there. All right, everyone have a great day. God bless.